Welcome to this explainer. Let's just jump right in. Picture this. It's July 5th, 1969. London is absolutely sweltering. We are going to look at the exact moment the Rolling Stones had to navigate a profound, devastating tragedy, and they had to do it right in front of a record-breaking crowd. Okay, set the scene in your mind. Imagine Mick Jagger standing on stage wearing this flowing, Greek-inspired voile dress, looking out at a completely silent crowd. He's reading these exact words, an excerpt from Percy Bysshe Shelley's 19th century poem, Adonais. Now, originally, this poem was an elegy for the poet John Keats, but today, Jagger is using it to speak of death as an awakening, an escape from the dream of life, to honor his former bandmate, Brian Jones. Now, what's truly mind-boggling here is the sheer scale of the moment. He is delivering this eulogy to an estimated 250,000 young people. They're all packed into the grassy bowl of Hyde Park's cockpit area, under this blinding summer sun. I mean, getting hundreds of thousands of people to stand in utter silence, that is a feat of pure magnetism. If we zoom out for a second, we can see how this single, incredibly atmospheric afternoon marked a massive shift in the 1960s counterculture and really redefined the whole trajectory of a legendary band. As reporters from The Guardian noted at the time, this massive crowd had a distinctly classless air to it. It wasn't about the disciplined, kind of puritanical middle-class protests of the early 60s anymore. No, this was the dawn of a completely uninhibited, free-flowing cultural movement. Part 1. Silence in Hyde Park. To really grasp the weight of that silence, we've got to look at the incredibly frantic and tragic sequence of events that led up to it. Just look at this timeline. It's incredibly tight. It shows you just how chaotic things really were behind the scenes. On July 3rd, founding member Brian Jones was tragically found drowned in his swimming pool. In a mere 48 hours, the band had to figure out exactly how to mourn a dear friend while still playing a massive, highly anticipated free gig. By the morning of the 5th, it was pure backstage chaos. So going into that day, Mick Jagger had a very specific mindset. His refusal to embrace traditional melancholy gives us a crucial window into the psychology of the tribute they were planning. Jagger explicitly said he didn't want a somber, weeping funeral. He wanted a celebration of life for Brian. But, as you'll see, translating that philosophy into a massive live event proved to be a bit more complicated than anyone anticipated. Part 2. Adonais and the Butterflies. This is where we see exactly how they tried to pull off this tribute, which, honestly, ended up being a chaotic, almost surreal mix of high-minded poetry and grim comedy. The idea was actually beautiful. The plan was to release thousands of white butterflies into the summer sky right after Jagger read the Shelley poem. It was meant to symbolize Brian's spirit taking flight. But the tragicomic reality of the logistics, oh man, it completely betrayed them. The butterflies had been stored in cardboard boxes, and because of the chilly temperatures, they were entirely unresponsive. Promoter Andrew King remembered the sheer panic at Paddington Station upon finding the butterflies cold and dormant. Now, they weren't dead, just sleeping because of the cold. What followed was this frantic, totally absurd attempt to warm the boxes up using baked bean hot plates. I mean, one of them literally caught fire. So when Mick finally opened those boxes on stage, most of the butterflies didn't fly away. They just dropped senseless to the floor, where, tragically, many were accidentally trod upon. Part 3. A Baptism by Fire. Because, despite the whole butterfly fiasco, they still had a massive rock show to deliver. The show must go on. And get this, despite playing to a crowd of hundreds of thousands, the band was crammed onto this tiny, modest scaffolding structure. Drummer Charlie Watts actually called it a Mickey Mouse little stage. They were surrounded by gear, sweating in the brutal sun, about to face a monumental test of their resilience. To add to all that intense pressure, this gigantic gig was the on-stage debut of their brand new guitarist, Mick Taylor. Just think about that for a second. You are filling the shoes of a founding member who just passed away, playing to 500,000 people, and you are only 20 years old? Talk about the ultimate baptism by fire. The setlist for the day was an absolute revelation. It perfectly captured a band in the middle of a massive transition. They actually opened with a startling, one-off Johnny Winter cover, I'm Yours and I'm Hers, which they never played live again. But then they launched into the live debuts of tracks that would become defining stadium anthems for the rest of their career. Songs like Jumping Jack Flash in Honky Tonk Women,
They even played an epic 11-minute version of Sympathy for the Devil, backed by Ginger Johnson's African drummers.
Part 4. The End of an Era. This concert wasn't just a turning point for the Stones' music, it really represented a broader cultural milestone at the tail end of the decade. The 1960s were closing out, and you could practically feel the change in the air. The vibe in the park was incredibly eclectic. Down in the barricaded VIP enclosure, you had rock royalty like Paul McCartney and The Who's Keith Moon just hanging out. Out in the massive crowd, you had everyone from families with sleeping dogs to Scots guardsmen, all amidst a sea of cheesecloth and uninhibited fashion. Yet, rather ominously, the security was manned by Hells Angels wearing swastika garb. It highlighted a deeply classless, shifting British cultural landscape that was teetering right between peace and chaos. It's super fascinating to situate this peaceful, if melancholy gig historically. It's sitting right there on the precipice of massive cultural change. Hyde Park happened in July. Just 1 month later, the world witnessed the triumph of Woodstock in America. But then, fast forward 5 months to December, and the Rolling Stones would play the Altamont Free concert, where that exact same Hells Angels security setup would lead to devastating tragedy. Yet it was right here in Hyde Park, amidst the dead butterflies, the sweltering heat, and all that profound grief, that stage manager Sam Cutler spontaneously coined the introduction that would define the band for decades. As he walked up to the mic to introduce them, they officially became the greatest rock and roll band in the world.
So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a thought. How did surviving this exact crucible, the intense grief over Brian Jones, the immense pressure, the chaotic logistics, how did it transform them from 1960s bluesy pop stars into the unstoppable cultural force we know today? Sometimes it's the moments where everything is on the line, where history threatens to bury you, that a true legacy is forged. What do you think would have happened to the Stones if they had just canceled the show? Let that sink in as you explore more about rock's greatest eras. Thanks for hanging out with me.